And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm Carrie Haisley with the National Weather Service with marine weather for Friday, August 23rd, 2024. You can find us anytime on the web at weather.gov/Alaska. And if you'd like to get a hold of us, the best way to get a hold of me directly, carrie.haisley@noaa.gov. Now, first a look at the sea ice edge. It is well offshore up over the Arctic, and we are not looking for any significant changes to this in the next 24 hours. In fact, even the next 5 days, we shouldn't see a significant change up here. The ice edge again well up over the Arctic with ice-free waters all along our coastal areas. Now let's go down south and let's start talking about winds and waves as we go through the weekend. The pattern is going to be pretty active weather-wise as we get into the weekend time frame, with an area of low pressure pushing its way into southeast Alaska, working its way across the Gulf right now. So starting out Saturday, we look for winds to be between 10 and 15 knots. Along the outer coast, seas between 4 and 5 feet, in the inner channels between 2 and 3 feet. Now, low pressure gets closer to the area on Sunday, so we see an increase in all of these numbers, where we see some winds even out of the south up to about 30 knots across the southern panhandle, 20 knots when you get into the northern panhandle, with seas in the inner channels between 4 and 6 feet. Higher seas out along the outer coast up to about 7 feet. The further south you go, 5 feet up closer to Yakutat. Now let's keep working our way to the west a bit. So Saturday, as we get into the south central area, we look for winds across the Cook Inlet area to be primarily out of the north and light, 10 knots. As you get a bit further south, though, southern parts of Cook Inlet, 25 knots with seas up to about 6 feet. Very variable winds out along the outer coast, along the eastern Kenai Peninsula and over towards Prince William Sound. Light, though, we'll keep those up to about 10 knots, seas up to about 3 feet. For the Sunday time frame, though, we start to see the winds kind of shift around to be primarily out of the north over most of this area. This is as an area of low pressure pushes its way towards the panhandle, so these north winds on the backside, so a bit of a cooler wind with this. We'll see them pick up in some areas, 10 to 15 knots along the the outer coast, not quite Arctic down here. We'll keep the 25 knots along the southern Cook Inlet area, up to about 6 feet for those seas, and then further north into Cook Inlet, 10 knots more of a northwesterly component, and 3 feet for those seas. Keeping our move out west here, Saturday, when we look at the Alaska Peninsula and the Kodiak Island area, winds primarily either out of the northwest or due west, closer to Kodiak Island, and fairly strong, 20 to 25 knots, with seas in the 4 to 6 foot range there. Not a lot of change when we get into the Sunday time frame. Kodiak, Alaska Peninsula is kind of between two weather systems that are going to be impacting Alaska at large, but we do see the seas come up a bit, closer to 5 feet in most places. In the southern part of the Bering there, maybe 6 feet, and winds generally in the 20 to 25 knot range. Now, continuing the move out west Saturday along the Aleutians, we do see some stronger winds. We see up to about 40 knots in the far western part of the Aleutians, 8 feet to 11 feet for those seas. And then the further east you go, the less both of these numbers are going to be. So we see our seas, the further west you go into the central part of the Aleutians, seas in that 4 to 6 foot range, winds in the 15 to 20 knot range. Big increase, though, when we get into the Sunday time frame. We've got a pretty strong area of low pressure moving its way into the Bering Sea. This is just another in a series of what we have been seeing over the last several days. Not quite as strong of a storm, but still definitely one we want to watch. Winds in that 35 to 40 knot range for the far western part of the Aleutians. Seas up to 17, 18 feet, and then we'll see those higher seas kind of work their way further into our marine areas as we get later into the day on Sunday and even into the Monday time frame. We'll see some of these pretty high values. Central part of the Aleutians, winds around 30 for the speed there, and then direction mostly out of the southwest or a bit of a westerly component, seas in the 9 to 11 foot range. Now let's work our way up the coast for the Saturday time frame. Winds primarily out of the north or the northwest, between 15 and 20 knots, seas between 5 and 6 feet for most of the area. A little bit of an increase on Sunday as an area of low pressure gets closer to the area, but it is still going to be offshore for the Sunday time frame. We still keep that northerly component to the winds, 10 knots for most of the area. Out in the central part of the Bering, we see some of those higher values. You see the 30s there on the map. Central part of the Bering there, we'll see the seas start to pick up the 8 to 12 foot numbers there. Closer to the coast, though, still pretty benign for the Sunday time frame with 2 to 3 foot seas. Now up north, again, all open water here. We have the ice edge well offshore, so we do have all all open water with seas primarily in the 3 to 5 foot range, so a bit stronger, maybe just off the Cape Lisburne, Cape Hope area, up to about 6 feet, 20 knot winds there. But overall, 20 knots will be kind of the dominant wind speed there. Not a lot of change for the Sunday time frame, 20 knots for the winds across most places. Further down along the west coast, closer to St. Lawrence Island and the Seward Peninsula, we'll look for 10 knot winds, north wind between 3 and 5 feet for the seas across most of this region.